Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are reacting to day number 5 of 49ers training camp that happened yesterday. If you're watching this live, happened yesterday, Saturday. What is that? July 27th. Today they have the week off and they're resting, or they have the day off, excuse me, and they're resting and preparing for their first day with pads being tomorrow, Monday. The pads come on for the San Francisco 49ers, and to begin today's show, want to kindly ask you to like, share, and subscribe, and let's discuss who wasn't at practice yesterday for the Niners. Who wasn't there? It's the usual suspects. Trent Williams still holding out, wants a brand new contract. Brandon Ayuk still holding in, wants a brand new contract, but we did get some more insight into what his hold-in looks like. According to Kyle Shanahan, Brandon Ayuk is doing everything but practice, which includes team meetings, which again, if you're gonna hold out, or in Ayuk's case, hold in, this is the worst potential hold-in ever. You are telling the team at every step of the way, you want to be there. You want to go in team meetings. You'll do everything but practice, not doing much to help your case if you want to get $30 million a year, Brandon Ayuk. It is also worth noting that Deebo Samuel, this day, July 28th, 2 years ago, signed his contract extension. I mean, we all know now, things were way worse with Deebo to a point of actually asking and requesting a trade. But it does seem like this is a time where as soon as the pads come on, as soon as you're a week in the training camp, the player has been going back and forth, and you come back to the facility, Niners HQ in Santa Clara, California, that's when things kind of pick up and steam picks up. And I'm hoping that whether it means something or not, knowing it was Deebo Samuel's 2-year anniversary today, maybe Brandon Ayuk and the Niners front office can kind of pick things up, have these conversations, and hopefully put pen to paper pretty soon. But good to know he's in team meetings. He's doing, again, quote unquote, everything but practicing in what has been the worst hold in, if you will, ever. It's not helping his case at all. Javon Hargrave got the day off yesterday, didn't practice. In his place, next to Malik Collins, we saw players like Kevin Givens and newly signed Jordan Elliott from the Browns in this offseason step up and play next to Javon Hargrave and work in with the ones. This team, unfortunately, is pretty thin on the defensive line. Not much edge depth, not much defensive tackle depth, to a point where I said they're probably going to cut somebody and sign another defensive tackle. I think that should still happen, but good to know that when Javon Hargrave goes out, players like Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott have been given the reins through the first week of camp to become first stringers. Kevin Givens, I think, could be a spot starter. Jordan Elliott, one of the better run defending defensive tackles in football, so didn't see much from them, but they're getting their feet wet again and finding themselves in Elliott's new defense and in Givens, who has started plenty times in the past. A lot of injuries, though. A lot of injuries to report from yesterday's practice. We got some smaller updates. Tay Martin, don't really know what's happening with him. Has an undisclosed injury. He's not practicing. Isaac Guerendo, rookie out of Louisville, running back. He's not practicing with the hamstring still. We did find out that Jacob Cowing, a rookie from Arizona at wide receiver, he also has a hamstring injury and has missed the last 2 practices, while defensive lineman Sam Okwonu walked off the field yesterday with a limp. Not sure exactly what happened, but a very similar thing happened to linebacker Demetrius Flanagan-Falls 2 practices ago, but he did return yesterday for individual drills, but did not partake in team drills. Got some bigger injury news and updates. Ricky Pearsall, first-round pick of this past year's draft, is expected to come back Monday. Now, will it happen? We'll obviously see tomorrow, but he is expected to be back on Monday. Talanoa Hufanga, former All-Pro safety. Kyle Shanahan said he feels great about the current safety room, which is a good sign for players like Malik Mustafa, George Odom, and Taylor Hawkins, but also he expects Talanoa Hufanga back in the next few weeks. Now, there is a caveat to that. While yes, many people have aggregated this, reported it, that Hufanga is going or expected to be back in the next few weeks, it's not just, in 2 weeks he's back. He's going to get checked out by doctors when the team flies to Irvine for joint practices with the Saints, and then if he's good to go, he will then return to practice from there, I'm assuming, once they get back to Levi Stadium, likely around week 2 or 3 of the preseason. So it's not just 2 weeks and he's good to go. It's 2 weeks, gets another checkout by a doctor. If they give him the green light, then things start to progress for Hufanga's recovery and hopefully his return from a torn ACL last season. We can talk about the hamstring injuries for a second because Lori Matthews here just says, what's up with all the hamstring injuries? You think it has anything to do with the new conditioning coaches? When you look at who is having the hamstring injuries, and Rob Smith says the exact same thing on the YouTube chat, hamstring injuries, not much staff can do about that. Usually more of a player thing, fluid stretching. But both your comments, Rob and Lori, look who's had the hamstring injuries. It's not veteran players, not guys who have been here for a handful of seasons. It's first-year players, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing, and Isaac Grendo, all rookie players with likely a new training staff, new workout regimes, on a new team, just not really, I won't say knowing what they're doing, but it's brand new to them, new to their bodies. I'm sure it's different workouts, some different stretches, and just guys who went through the entirety of a college season, right into the combine, had maybe a month off, then right into their first OTAs and their training camp. So I'm sure for those guys, it's rookies trying to get their bodies right. And unfortunately for guys that are really fast, Pearsall, Cowling, and Grendo, speedy guys, if you're cutting and you're juking and jiving, you're going to pull something. Those guys have had hamstring injuries a lot in their college careers. Go back to Grendo. His hamstring has been his arch nemesis. It has been his kryptonite when he was in Wisconsin before he transferred to Louisville. So I wouldn't put too much into a coaching staff issue or a conditioning issue. I just think it's young players that are really fast, overworking the hamstrings early in their NFL careers. But I wouldn't put too much into it. We did get, I guess you can say, some unironic breaking news, unfortunately, was that 2 days ago, so Friday, Spencer Buford didn't practice. We assumed it was a vet day, weren't really sure what was going on. He came out yesterday, though, with a sleeve or a cast on his hand. Red flags went up. We said, what's going on here? He did some individual drills on the side, so it's not too serious, but it's serious enough to classify Spencer Buford with having a fractured or broken hand, and he's likely going to miss 1, 2, 3 weeks. Weeks was the terminology used, so it could be 1 week, could be a month, for all we know. And the team has yet to decide if he needs surgery, which my assumption would be he'll practice a little bit on the side, see if he can avoid surgery, but if he can't, they'll go under the knife, hopefully heal it and get him back as soon as they can. That said, this blows for a young player like himself who, although has started in the past, the last 2 years mainly, right, but there was an offensive line competition happening. And for a player that was taking every single snap at right guard with the first team, to break your hand and potentially miss, let's say it's 3 weeks, I mean, at that point, you're inching closer to week number 1 against the Jets. Now, we know what he can do. The hope would be in year 3, he shows you some more. Unfortunately, Spencer Buford's chance to, I don't want to say start, but a lot of his opportunity is now out the window, where had he stayed healthy, had he not broke his hand, maybe he is the leader in the pack heading into preseason week 1, 2, and 3 and comes into week 1 against the Jets as a starter. Now it feels like that's out the window. Now it feels like his opportunity to prove himself is gone. And it's looking more likely that we do see players like John Feliciano and Jake Brendel starting again, which would give San Francisco their exact same starting offensive line once they can extend or restructure Trent Williams' contract. So a big blow for the offensive line competition at right guard for sure. Obviously weakens San Francisco's offensive line during the preseason. Maybe they sign somebody. Maybe they work Kingston back to guard, who hasn't taken any snaps there at all through a handful of days. Maybe it opens the door for Ben Barch to get more reps, who did get center reps yesterday at practice. But overall, it's a big blow for Spencer Buford's chance to start to begin the year. And when someone goes down, it means a good opportunity for players like Dominic Pooney, for Jarrett Kingston, for Ben Barches out there to actually start or win depth jobs on the offensive line, which brings us to John Feliciano, who apparently has a knee injury. Doesn't seem to be very serious, but as of right now, for what it's worth, San Francisco currently does not have both of their right guards. If you go back to last year, don't have either one of their right guards that started games for them last year. Not good. Not good, to say the least. Now, again, not very serious from what we can tell. Burford should be back by week 1. Feliciano likely back at practice this week, but still worth noting. But with no Burford out there and no Feliciano out there, it meant that Dominic Pooney, third-round pick this past year, got his second day to work with the first team, and Jake Brendel was back at center with Ben Barch as the second-team center instead of Nick Zakel, so a rotation happening at center with the second and third teams behind Jake Brendel. Unfortunately, while the injuries suck in themselves, it wasn't very pretty either way. The offensive line, without Trent Williams, without players like Jake Brendel, without players like John Feliciano or Spencer Buford, have struggled big time. They've really, really struggled. Like to a point of, oh my goodness, Brock Purdy, run for your life, my friend. Run for your life. It's been a lot of pressure. And I'm sure when you look at it, it's a rotating group of pieces. It's the absence of Trent, no Trent Williams, but it's not been good. It's been actually pretty bad, to a point of like, do you actually trust your depth? Do you believe in these guys? But like Laurie Matthews said, I'm full of good news today. I'll give you some good news today, Laurie. I would like to believe that once the pads comes on, that we are going to get a much improved offensive line play. Once Trent Williams comes back and the starters actually come back healthy, that things will kind of even themselves out. Because without the pads on, the defense has a large advantage, especially on the offensive line. And it stinks. It really does stink, because in 1 week of practice, media, people there at training camp could be like, oh, this guy stinks and that guy stinks. Well, in reality, maybe not. Get these guys some pads on and you'll see these guys go to work. You'll see what they actually can do. Like the big test for me, I'm no offensive line guru, mind you, but I'm never going, and no one ever should, make an assessment on, or a concrete assessment on a player in the first week of training camp with no pads on. When half these guys are against air, or it's 1v1s, or they're installing the offenses and defenses, like you just can't do that. Yet, some do. I will not do that. I think that once Williams comes back, you get Feliciano back, and 3 weeks Burford comes back, and you get some pads on even even tomorrow, even if the guys aren't even healthy, you're going to see guys like Jalen Moore, Aaron Banks, Brendel, Barch, Pooney, Kingston, and McKivitz all look much, much better. Because yesterday, it wasn't pretty. 2 days ago, it was really bad. Yesterday, Leonard Floyd had 2 sacks. Nick Bosa had a sack and a pressure, and Fred Warner was even back there wreaking havoc. Like, it's been relatively bad. Kenny here says no Drake Nugent. Drake Nugent was practicing 2 days ago. I can tell with the backups, mainly third and fourth string guys, they're kind of every other day with them. They'll get third string reps, but nothing as of yesterday. But 2 days ago, he did get some reps when Feliciano and Brendel were not practicing. Rob Smith says he can't wait to see Puni play with pads on. He hears he's real nasty, and he thinks he'll work his way into a starting job this year. Well, that goes back to the Buford injury, right? So let's say Buford's not healthy come week 1, or even in the next 2 or 3 weeks without him if he doesn't practice. This is a great opportunity for Dominic Puni to prove himself. That if he's getting all the right guard reps, or a lot of them, right, this is a really good chance for a young player that many folks want to play right tackle, but if he can solidify the right guard position, I've always said this, that my hope was that they could walk into this year with Dominic Puni starting, whether it's a right guard or right tackle. I wanted it to be at right tackle simply because it allows McKivitz to become your swing tackle. Jalen Moore does not have to play. Feliciano is still your right guard. Buford can, be your backup right guard, and everything kind of smooths itself out. Now that said, even if Puni is your starting right guard, Feliciano instantly becomes your backup center and right guard. Ben Barch goes to your backup left guard. Buford kind of becomes the backup right tackle and right guard, maybe even left guard guy. It just gives you Puni starting gives you so much more versatility. Even to a point where I don't think they'd cut Buford. I don't think they'd cut Ben Barch because of the guaranteed money he has, but you also drafted Jared Kingston. If you find yourself in a situation where you're like, wow, Puni starting, he's playing great, we have the veteran behind him and Feliciano in case he starts to struggle, or in case Brendel goes down, we're in a good spot depth-wise. Despite San Francisco currently having a lot of injuries, there is a way if Dominic Puni starts that, one, it's a great thing for him in San Francisco because it's a first-year offensive lineman starting. When does that happen? Aaron Banks didn't do that, and McGlinchey had to because, he was the only guy they had over there, right? That said, it also gives them so much more depth on the interior and even adds depth towards the tackle positions. But offensive line wasn't that great. We will see tomorrow, Monday, when the pads come on, how they do. I'm expecting bigger and brighter things. I do want to see players like Dominic Puni and Ben Barch and more depth pieces actually be able to prove themselves. Even for a player like Jalen Moore, who isn't great, I think he actually wasn't as bad as people thought last year. I know they lost those couple games he played and started in, but I don't think it was entirely his fault. It's just that Trent Williams is so darn good. He makes even maybe a smidge under average bench player look terrible compared to him. But I really do want to see great things once the pads come on for the offensive line, which brings us to the quarterback position. Now, Brock Purdy has overwhelmingly had a really good training camp so far. His worst day was Friday, but it was kind of a weirder day of practice. A lot of vets didn't play. Weapons weren't out there. Kittle and McCaffrey didn't practice. No Trent Williams. No Brandon Ayuk still. No Pearsall. He's throwing to guys like Cowing. Or actually, Cowing didn't practice either. So he's throwing to guys like Deebo and Juwan Jennings and, Chris Conley's and a lot of guys who, Ronnie Bells of the world, who likely won't be out there most of the time. But it was a slower start for Brock Purdy because the offensive line wasn't doing well. But I will say this, that after they got things figured out, Brock Purdy started to find his groove, started to get, more consistent, feel that confidence. And I think that, despite missing on some throws, he had one to, back shoulder. Christian McCaffrey on the sideline just missed him by a smidge, mind you. And even later, before things got going, we saw Demo Lenore had an amazing pass breakup against Cam Latu. But after that, it was smooth sailing. He found Malik Turner over the middle. Over Fred Warner was a great throw. Found Deebo Samuel on a comeback towards the sideline. Then he hit Chris Conley over the middle for, over the linebackers again. But, a slower start for Purdy, but the way he ended, 10 straight completions. And they always say it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Brock Purdy was a slow starter yesterday, but was a really, really hot finisher. And I think, you're going to have those days in practice. It was colder yesterday. It was, it wasn't 92 degrees and hot in Santa Clara. It was like 70, 78. A little breeze was in the air. So, and overall, I would say you could argue up and down, but I could say it wasn't a great start, but a really strong finish for Brock Purdy. Fish and Chips says in the YouTube chat, these offensive linemen are mid at best. They are hidden due to the quick release of Purdy and CMC's effort. Trent Williams is great, right? But Aaron Banks is pretty good. I think Aaron Banks was pretty undervalued last year. Jake Brendel wasn't as good as he was 2 years ago, but was fine. I think Feliciano was actually really good last year for them. Then Colton McKivitz was an average right tackle. That said, you have to wonder, yes, I'm sure they were helped by how good the offensive is. Purdy being great, near MVP, and CMC being a near MVP, right? It will certainly help you. This is not the Cleveland Browns offensive line that are stacked, but have a bad quarterback and, not now, but had terrible weapons last year. And we're having Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper carry that team down the stretch because Nick Chubb got hurt early in the season. But I think that, the way things are set up now is that the offensive line, because it really isn't at full strength, you can't put too much into it. And I think, again, once you get Trent and Banks and Brendel or Feliciano and Pooney in there, I don't think San Francisco's offline they're not great. They're not great. There's a reason why for, I think, the third time under Kyle Shanahan, they picked an offensive lineman in the third round, right? It was McGlinchey was a first rounder, Banks second rounder, didn't even play in his first year, and then it was now Dominic Pooney. They don't draft offensive linemen often in the first 3 rounds, and when they do, you have to realize why. They understood we have to get better on the offensive line, mainly at right guard and right tackle. That's why they picked Dominic Pooney. And I get fans are angry at times. You see folks here like Kenny saying, it's amazing that San Francisco even made it to the Super Bowl because of the offensive line they had, right? They wouldn't sign guys like Chris Hubbard and Brandon Parker. While those guys are depth pieces for sure, backup tackles, backup guards, the overwhelming consensus is the offensive line wasn't that great last year. I would agree with you. It was like 21st, I think, according to PFF, in efficiency against the, pass block, whatever the stat is they use. But I think when you go into the draft and you see they drafted 2 offensive linemen, right? I think, the way Shanahan attacks the offensive line is never what we want it to be. Like Fish and Chip says, the Tim Kawakami interview where he says, essentially, we would love to draft offensive linemen. That said, we can't always pick who we want, thus we pivot to the weapons we like. And if you can't score, well, what's the point of having an amazing offensive line? Now, I would push back and say Trey Sermon, Danny Gray, and Ty Davis Price, Trey Lance. Like, there are ample examples of areas where you could have picked an offensive lineman instead. Like, imagine this team with Penei Sewell, right? Or somebody else. But I will say this, that while we have to give it time, I think that when they left the draft with Dominic Pooney and Jarrett Kingston, although I have much higher hopes for Pooney, you can tell there was a concerted effort to draft an offensive lineman to improve the interior or, by off chance, right tackle. They realize there's an issue there, and they're trying to fix it. But we're not going to know how much that's fixed it because the pads aren't even on yet. So hopefully things will change. Hopefully you can walk into this year with the best offensive line we've ever had, whether it is Feliciano playing, whether it is Dominic Pooney playing. I'm just hoping, because you're right, Kenny. You're right. And Fish and Chips. The offensive line has cost us. Mike Person, Spencer Buford being the biggest victims of Chris Jones. Kenny says the Chiefs They drafted like 3 offensive linemen in the same draft or back-to-back drafts. Creed Humphrey being a massive example of that. You're hoping San Francisco can somehow decide to do that eventually. It would certainly help in big games. And again, for a team that builds from the inside out on defense, they don't do it offensively, which doesn't make sense to me, but I digress. Once the pads comes on tomorrow, hopefully we'll see a much better offensive line for Brock Purdy, because again, once it was there, once they got comfortable and things kind of settled down, Purdy had 3 really nice passes back to back to back. And again, completed his last 10 passes of team drills. Good stuff there. Moving on to the quarterback 2 competition. Not much to say about Brandon Allen, because Joshua Dobbs had his best practice so far. If my math is mathing, right? 10 for 11. He only threw 1 incompletion while being the second and third string quarterback, mixing in and out with Brandon Allen. And I think for the first time in the new offense that, for him with the Cardinals last year and the Vikings last year, albeit similarities, it's a little different, right? New terminology, new hand signals. And I think for him, right, Josh Dobbs was not looking very good the first few practices. Yesterday, much improved, looked comfortable for the first time in the offense, wasn't forcing anything, was actually acting how you want the backup quarterback of your team to act. Don't press things. You're not supposed to win us games. You're supposed to keep us in games. Now, to be fair, Brock Purdy was not supposed to be a starting quarterback, and actually is the reason why we're winning games. But for the first time in training camp, Joshua Dobbs looked like a solid backup quarterback, was taking what the defense gave him and letting his offensive weapons do the work. I can only imagine if he can do that. If you get the offensive line figured out, get healthy, re-sign Trent Williams back to his deal, and walk into whatever week it is with a fully healthy offensive line, and if Brock Purdy goes down, fingers crossed, doesn't happen, knock on wood, doesn't happen, right? If Joshua Dobbs can act how he did yesterday with Brandon Ayuk back and George Kittle out there and Christian McCaffrey out there and Deebo Samuel out there and Jawan Jennings as his slot receiver, we're going to be fine for a couple of weeks. Maybe 1 week, maybe 2, on the off chance 3, right? You never want to lose a quarterback, but Dobbs looked much better. And I think last year, you saw Joshua Dobbs actually be the reason why teams like Minnesota won games late in the season when they were kind of like trying to find themselves post Kirk Cousins. And even the Cardinals, being a game manager, helped them beat the freaking Cowboys in week number 4, whatever it was. So, Josh Dobbs has a little bit in him, right? To win you games. You're just hoping that I think Josh Dobbs and, surprisingly enough, Josh Allen have a lot of similarities in that while Josh Allen is so much better than Joshua Dobbs, they can get in their way a lot, where Josh Dobbs can actually win you a handful of games. Josh Allen can win you a lot more games than Joshua Dobbs can, but we saw last year that Josh Allen can just hand a game away. Now, unlike Joshua Dobbs, he has the capability of bringing you back into the game and winning the game for you once he almost hands it away. But Joshua Dobbs, because he's a little reckless sometimes with the ball, he'll just give the game away. Go back to that game against the Broncos when he's in Minnesota. Oh my God. Yikes. There's a reason why he got benched while he was there in Minnesota. But I think yesterday was his best practice so far. And I think for as good as Brandon Allen has been through the first 4 practices, if Joshua Dobbs can continue this streak of things, he should be this team's backup quarterback. But again, it's practice number 5. We'll have to see once the pads come on. A lot of people talk about Tanner Mordecai, the quarterback number 4, the UDFA out of Wisconsin, I believe. I just don't get it. I get it. Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the draft. You're kind of trying to find that next thing of, could this guy be the next Brock Purdy? Tanner Mordecai has not looked good, like at all. And even then, being there at camp 2 years ago while Brock Purdy was there, you want to know why no one talked about Brock Purdy? Because no one saw him play. He rarely ever got reps when the media was there. When they cut Nate Sudfeld for Brock Purdy, we all said, huh? Because no one actually saw Brock Purdy play outside of college. Then you go to last year. It was Purdy and Sam Darnold and Trey Lance and Brandon Allen. Nobody expected Brandon Allen to make the team because of what they had in Trey Lance and Darnold and Purdy, but no one also saw Brandon Allen practice that much. It was like, here's 2 throwaway reps, go out there. And here we are again. I don't think Tanner Mordecai going to do much. And I get it. Tanner's some people's guys. Larry Krueger loves Tanner Mordecai. That's fine. Larry, do your thing, brother. He's a great guy. Go do your thing, Larry. But the throwing motion's weird. The arm strength accuracy is not there for me. But again, the expectation isn't for your 4th-string quarterback to ever play. In fact, not make the team would be preferred. Right? If he does, yikes. That said, there actually is one player that I think has a really good opportunity in the next few weeks, like Dominic Pooney does, to make a statement, to, I don't want to say make the roster, but I think at least has a chance to show what he can do. Now, what is that? We shall see. But I do think that Cody Schrader, running back / fullback out of Missouri, really tiny guy, he's like 5'9". I think what we've seen from him so far in training camp, it hasn't been, mind-blowing, but he's a really smart kid. He knows the offense at Missouri, was in a wide zone scheme. I think so far he's had a pretty strong start to training camp, and again, he's a long shot to make the roster, but he knows the system. He played in a wide zone scheme at Missouri. He's hitting the right holes. He's following his blocks well. And I think he definitely has a leg up on the common undrafted free agent simply because he knows the system. And I think for what he's shown so far, that a player like, take Isaac Guerendo, for example, right? Mid-round pick, testing skills off the chart, currently injured, right? And I think for a young player like Cody Schrader, because Guerendo is injured, because that Guerendo's likely role is going to be the 3rd, maybe the 4th running back on the roster and a potential return man with the new rules in place, with Guerendo out, this is a really good chance for a player like Cody Schrader, who again, I think has a leg up on the common UDFA because he knows the system. He's a smart player. He really does understand the wide zone scheme. And I think, whether he makes the roster or not, I think he is a dark horse, whether it's a practice squad player or if Guerendo or Mitchell go down, which both those guys have shown the ability to not stay healthy, whether it's in college or the NFL, I would not be surprised if, at least for the longevity of those 2 players' injuries, if they go down, Guerendo already being hurt, that Cody Schrader is this team's 4th running back, and I would not be shocked if he is their kick returner for a week or so. I just think that, he has a leg up on guys. He's a smart kid, really good in college. We broke down the entire UDFA class, and Cody Schrader was a highlight of the team. Yes, fish and chips, Patrick Taylor Jr. is there. If I'm being completely honest, he's what we call a jag, just a guy. Can he help you on special teams? Yeah. Has he shown things in small spurts in the NFL? Yes. But, in the room we currently have with McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell when he's healthy is good. The upside with Guerendo and Jordan Mason seemingly taking a step up this year according to Kyle Shanahan, and we've seen that so far in the first 5 days of training camp. I would like to hope Cody Schrader beats out Taylor for a job. And I think he has the the ability to. I really think he does. And I think with the new kicking rules, go back to the UDFA breakdown or the last couple episodes of the podcast, we've talked about that. Deebo Samuel said there's going to be a lot of touchdowns scored this year. Cody Schrader can score you some touchdowns. He can get you down the field. And I think, being 5'9", being a running back will certainly help. Now, like I see Kenny in the comments saying here, the kickoff rules are going to cost us. We have to defend kickoffs. That's a massive deal. That is a reason why Jordan Mason has made this roster the past couple years. It's a reason why guys like Chris Conley are so valuable. You don't want them usually weeks 1 through 18, but on the off chance they have to play, they can come in. They're veterans. They're phenomenal on special teams. Go back to the Super Bowl. Chris Conley was an unsung hero covering punts and kicks in the Super Bowl. Like, you have to have him. So if whether it's Cody Schrader or Grendo or any other UDFA out there, I think that, there's a real chance if you can prove yourself, whether it be a returner or a defender on special teams, you have a really good chance to make this roster. That's why San Francisco went and signed Odom a couple years ago at Oren Burks. Now Burks is gone. They brought in Ezekiel Turner from the Cardinals. They realized we got to get special teamers in the building. We have to be able to defend kicks and punts. Moving on for a second to Deebo Samuel. Look, I have gushed about Deebo Samuel ever since training camp started, and it's not going to stop because what Deebo Samuel has been doing has been really impressive. Now, it's hard to be impressed by a former All-Pro, former top 10 receiver in football. Like, Deebo Samuel is amazing, right? But what I've noticed so far is that not only is Deebo Samuel in the best condition we've ever seen him in, right? But he has not taken a day off so far. When Kittle and McCaffrey, take days off, when players like Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk aren't practicing, when your vets are on the sideline, who's playing? When Fred Warner, who we know is out there all the time, takes a day off, who's been out there? It's been Deebo Samuel. And last year, he wasn't doing that. 2 years ago, he wasn't doing that. And I think, we've seen Deebo at practice every day, working hard, leading by example. And again, through 5 days, it hasn't mattered which quarterback he's played with. Whether it's Mordecai or Dobbs or Allen or Purdy, he has been playing at a high level. And I think, I don't want you to take this lightly. Deebo Samuel might be the most motivated he's ever been and arguably in the best shape we've ever seen him in. And I think you don't want to burn your reps early in training camp, but I think, what he's been doing so far has been really impressive. And I think, the way Deebo has attacked the offseason, he might be set up for his best season ever. Now, a couple years ago, there was no McCaffrey. Jennings was a rookie, and Ayuk was just kind of budding into a star. But we even saw last year, those couple games against Seattle during that middle kind of, Thanksgiving to Christmas kind of stretch of games, Deebo Samuel was on another level. He's skinny Deebo now. He's in amazing shape, and I cannot wait, really cannot wait for not only the season to start, but just for the fans to see Deebo again. He got a lot of hate after the Super Bowl and last year for being hurt so much, but Deebo Samuel, I think, is ready and willing to put a lot of critics to shame. For a lot of people saying trade Deebo, and I'm one of them who has said the way his contract is set up, you could trade Deebo away in 1 year's time to re-sign other players. The way Deebo has handled himself this offseason, it's a different Deebo, and it's a scarier Deebo. It's a faster Deebo. It's going to be if he can stay healthy, really big year from Deebo Samuel. I want to move to the defensive side of things because the last podcast episode, we talked about the defensive line. Drake Jackson, when Bosa isn't out there, it gets kind of murky and scary. It's Leonard Floyd, it's Yetur Gross-Matos, it's Austin Bryant, it's nobody else. But there is one player actually having a really quiet but kind of good camp. That is Robert Beal Jr. Last year, I think it was a 5th-round pick out of Georgia, and didn't play much last year. But I think the last few practices kind of started to flash a little bit, starting to see the work he put in during the offseason. Got his body right. He's clearly bigger and stronger than he was last year. He missed a lot of time last year due to injury. But San Francisco desperately needs edge help, like desperately. And they're hoping people like Drake Jackson can find themselves again, being a former 2nd-round pick. But through the first 5 days, Robert Beal Jr., if he can continue to do what he's done so far, again, in 5 days with no pads, he's been setting better edges. He's been getting some pressure. I honestly see no reason as to why he couldn't jump Drake Jackson on the depth chart. He couldn't, become a key situational pass rusher, or if he can give you, 4 to 6 sacks during a year and just kind of be this, it's 3rd and 8, it's 3rd and 12, go get the quarterback kind of player. Obviously, you want Bosa and Floyd out there. Don't get me wrong. But I just think that we didn't see Beal Jr. last year. And I have no doubt in my mind that San Francisco will add a piece or two, whether it's before the year starts or during the season. They're always active towards the trade deadline if things are going their way in the win-loss column. That said, it certainly feels like that Robert Beal Jr. put the work in, and through 5 days, we are seeing that work and the progress he's made come to life on the field. And it's a good sign because this team desperately needs it. Now, again, you got to prove it. I'm always someone, whether it was Trey Lance when we drafted him or it's Beal Jr. now, I don't care the work you put in. It's great, but you got to prove it on the field. So I'm hoping that he can become something and his hard work pays off. I do want to mention quickly the kick returners we saw yesterday, guys like Danny Gray, Ronnie Bell, Elijah Mitchell, Trent Taylor, and Cody Schrader. So a lot of the familiar suspects that were on the kick return practice a couple of days ago, on it again today or yesterday. No Deebo Samuel out there, which I'm sure is a coincidence, nothing to look into that. But I do think there was a surprising name on it, which baffled me, and it was Ambry Thomas. Now, I didn't look into this, so forgive me. I don't think Ambry Thomas did kicks at Michigan. And Ambry Thomas, for this team looking for a kick returner the last, 3 seasons, I get they had McLeod, but he was hurt for a couple weeks, and they had Chris Conley, and McLeod was fine. They were paying him to be what he was, but this team has been wanting more from their return team. And to see Ambry Thomas out there shocked me. But you can tell, the other names out there make sense. Danny Gray on the bubble. Ronnie Bell on the bubble. Elijah Mitchell, not on the bubble, but certainly trying to find his spot on the roster in regards to what is your role going to be. Are you going to be the RB2 again? Or are you going to be the kick returner, right? Cody Schrader on the bubble, trying to fight for a spot. Trent Taylor on the bubble, trying to find a spot. To me, and maybe I'm reading into things too much, that Ambry Thomas is on the bubble looking for a roster spot. He's like, it's like in middle school or high school when you play baseball. Can anybody pitch? Who wants to pitch? We need a pitcher in baseball. And everyone's like, I can pitch, coach. Have you ever pitched before? No, but I'll certainly try. You want to know why? Because you want to play, right? That kind of feels like Ambry Thomas, where it's like, have you pitched before, Ambry? Have you done kick returns before, Ambry? He's like, no, but I'll give it a try, coach. I'll give it a try. We shall see. But this goes back to what Rob said in the comments earlier. And if I can find it really fast, let's see if I can find, here you go, Rob. Rob Smith says, I think we can get a draft pick for Mitchell. He's shown some pretty good stuff when healthy. Rob, I'm going to remove the name Elijah Mitchell out of your comment. And I'm going to say this. I think the Niners could get a draft pick for Ambry Thomas. He's shown some pretty good stuff, just not consistently. Now, I already hit on this in the last episode. I don't want to, just be the same show every single time. That said, there was a report that came out yesterday that the Minnesota Vikings could be looking for a cornerback. Now, if you're me, start connecting dots. You look like Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia and making, at the whiteboard, like connecting dots, like putting strings together like it's a murder scene and you're trying to find out who the killer is, right? I said, well, let's look this thing together. Travarius Ward, CB1. Lenore, CB2. Yadam, CB3. Okay. Bernardo Green, CB4. Daryl Luter, CB5. Okay, who's that sixth cornerback? Is it Samuel Womack? Is it Chase Lucas? Is it Rocky Sin? Is it Ambry Thomas? There are a lot of players fighting for roster spots at cornerback. You can't keep all of them now. Look, I think to have the strongest cornerback room to give you legit potential starting ability at 1 through 6, you keep Ambry Thomas. That said, if a team like the Vikings comes calling, or because they've had already 2 catastrophic injuries, one being the unfortunate death to Kyrie Jackson, which is just terrible in itself. Also, a lot of injuries besides, again, the horrible death of Kyrie Jackson. We gushed about Kyrie Jackson on this podcast a lot during the draft process. I talked about how Kyrie was a draft crush of mine and thought that he could become and had the build to be a great cornerback. It's just terrible that he passed away. But the Vikings have been just stripped of their talent at cornerback because of injury. And I think if the Niners called a team like Minnesota, I think they could actually get maybe a 5th or 6th round pick from the Vikings. They need a starting cornerback or someone that could start. We have Ambry Thomas, who, if he doesn't play well in the preseason and finds himself on the bubble come week 2 of the preseason, I could see San Francisco calling up the Vikings, who, don't forget, we have ties to their front office. Kwesi is their GM. They know us. We know them. They just signed Sam Darnold. There's a lot of ties to the team, the scheme, the front office. There was a lot of talk they were going to sign Brock Purdy. There was a lot of talk they wanted to draft Trey Lance, or San Francisco was going to trade Trey Lance to them because they wanted the quarterback, right? There's a lot of ties there. And I think that I'm not predicting anything. I'm just saying that for the sake of conversation, a trade with the Vikings for Ambry Thomas makes a lot of sense. You get a draft pick back. Maybe it's a 5th round pick. I truly, truly believe that Ambry Thomas could net you something. And if you're not going to play him, and if you're going to cut him, if he doesn't play well, which there has been no indication he's not been playing well so far, I want to state that clearly. I just think that, hey, get a 5th round pick back. We love the 5th round. We love the 5th round. Yeah, DJ Jones, 6th rounder, Kittle, Greenlaw, Hufanga. We love the 5th round. I'll take a 5th round pick for Ambry Thomas, who has been never been a legit starting cornerback. And if you like Yadam enough, and you like Daryl Luter Jr. enough, well, hey, what is the need to keep him on here when Samuel Womack is a really good gunner on special teams? Rocky Sin, for whatever reason, Brandon Staley or Nick Sorensen tend to like him a little bit, right? And Chase Lucas, who was signed as a free agent, special teamer. If they can bring you more value as your 6th cornerback than Thomas could, why have him out there? So it could be nothing. It's pure speculation on my end, but I could see a trade happening with the Vikings. They don't really want to contend this year. They know young quarterback. They're not going to beat the Lions. You're not going to beat the Packers, but Ambry Thomas is still really young. Get him in your system. If you like him enough, you can re-sign him to a relatively cheap deal. He can be a starter for you, and kind of be a part of your retool and your rebuild. So, again, it could be nothing, but I just think keep an eye on the Vikings and the Niners. San Francisco is unafraid to make, preseason trades. Trey Lance last year being a big one. Go back to 2 years ago, I think, maybe even 3 years ago. Jonas Griffith was having a phenomenal training camp in preseason. What'd they do? They shipped him off to Denver for like a 6th-round pick. San Francisco, I'm just saying, there's room for conversation of trading Ambry Thomas to the Minnesota Vikings. They need a cornerback. We love draft picks in the 5th round. Let's make it happen if Thomas struggles. But again, pads come on tomorrow. So we shall see how training camp progresses. That's all I have for you today. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. This was the only day off of Niner camp, so thought we continued that conversation today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, share, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe and that bell notification. You are going to want to know when we go live next. We go live after every single Niners training camp practice. And again, pads come on Monday and are on all week. The pads are here. It's starting to get real at training camp. If you're listening on the audio platforms, hit subscribe, leave a review, give us 5 stars, tell us whatever you want in the comment section. Just say 5 stars. And whatever you want to say, tell us what you're having for dinner. For all I care. You having some chicken chow mein, some Panda Express? Have yourself some fun. I had some Pyology earlier. It was pretty good. Got the cauliflower crust. It was great. That said, you can follow us on social media as well. 49ers_access is the Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. You can use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. If you want to see your Niners play, use that promo code right here on your screen. Save yourself $20 off. Thank you so much to Bobo, Rob Smith, Fish and Chips, Kenny 49ers, Lori Matthews, Jim Everett the Great saying the Ramley's in the house. Great. I'm glad you're here. Plenty of others in the comments as well. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, stay faithful.